Conference Committee report on House Bill number 2073, an act relating to higher education. The report is addressed to the Honorable Melissa Hortman, Speaker of the House, and the Honorable Bobby Joe Champion, President of the Senate. We, the undersigned conferees for House Bill number 2733, report that we have agreed upon the items in dispute and recommend as follows. The report is signed by 2 of the 3 members on the part of the House and 3 out of 3 members on the part of the Senate. Pawlowski moves that the report of the Conference Committee on House Bill number 2073 be adopted and that the bill be repassed as amended by the Conference Committee.
I recognize the member from Winona, Representative Pawlowski, who will explain the report.
Madam Speaker, that is my motion, and I would encourage everyone to support it.
On the motion to adopt the Conference Committee report, Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I would encourage you to not adopt the Conference Committee report. And as we've seen at ALBA, it's been an incredible pattern emerging over and over and over again that these conference committees this one was composed of 6 people, but it seems that 2 were making all the decisions. It happened over the weekend. I had no information as to what was happening. I had no input into what was in the bill. We just finished our conference committee hearing just a few moments ago, and I learned a ton in that conference committee. But, you know, if we're going to do this, members, we should do it in public view. The public should know what's going on when there's offers being traded back and forth. We should have these conversations publicly, and I would ask for a no vote. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
All those in favor of the motion to adopt the Conference Committee report, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended by conference.
Third reading, House Bill number 2073, as amended by conference.
Third reading as amended by conference. I recognize the member from Winona, Representative Pawlowski, to explain the report.
Madam Speaker and members, there is some significant difference in this bill and the bill that left the House chamber. And I'm going to go to those differences first. We concluded in the Conference Committee report to adopt the Senate position of the North Star Promise. This would allow individuals under a certain income to receive free tuition after Pell scholarships and other items are considered. This is perhaps the major difference in the bill. We continued the House position of fully funding a tuition freeze for the Min-State system. This is only the 2nd time in the history of the state that we have frozen tuition and paid for it for one section of higher education. We did a number of other things that I know the body would be interested in. The University of Minnesota has $100 million over the biennium. This will allow them to have a 3.5 tuition increase on the main campus in Rochester, and a 1% increase in tuition at Morris, Crookston, and Duluth. We fully funded the University of Minnesota's system-wide safety and security for $10 million, adding another $2 million per year to the base. We provide $1 million per year for the tribal colleges. This is a base adjustment. And Madam Speaker, I think I'll close with that and allow discussion and questions.
Discussion to the bill. The member from Wright, Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Well, yes, we had quite an illustrious conference committee just now. We just finished up about 10 minutes ago. And as the chair mentioned, it's $125 million that we're going to be allocating to the University of Minnesota, and they're still going to do a tuition increase. We're going to do free college, so that's going to cost $117 million, free college for anybody with a household adjusted family income of $80,000 or less, and we're still going to have a tuition increase at the University of Minnesota by 3.5% and 1%. So that's at the Twin Cities campus and the Rochester campus, and all the other campuses of the U of M will have a 1% increase. And the only reason that the Min-State system doesn't have a tuition increase is because we froze it. We did pay for that freeze, but they even said that because of their 10-year record of enrollment declines, they are still in a precarious situation, and there'll still be layoffs, and there'll still be early retirements, and there'll still be a lot of other things that you've heard about in your inbox. So we're spending $650 million above base in this biennium, $450 million in the tails, and we still will have tuition increases. We're going to do free college for if you go to Penn State, if you go to the University of Minnesota, or if you go to a tribal college, and we're still going to have a tuition increase. And we're still going to have layoffs. Members, I would encourage you to vote no on this bill. It doesn't make any sense in my very number brain, logical brain. It makes no sense whatsoever how we could spend that much money over base and still end up with tuition increases and layoffs, particularly in the Penn State system. I will end with something good, because I always try to give you something good. And I am very encouraged that we still kept in the support for our 3 tribal colleges. It's $1 million per year for the 3 tribal colleges. And I know months ago now, when we talked about this in the Higher Ed Committee, I was told that that was the #1 priority of that committee. I know it was a high priority of the governor, and it apparently was a high priority of the Senate. So that is still in. And I am appreciative of that, because I think it's important that we support those tribal colleges that haven't had O&M support from the state before. And I hope that that will really help those very devastated areas. And, you know, I grew up in Bagley, so that's right in the middle of those 3 tribal colleges, right by White Earth and Leech Lake and Red Lake. And it's a very, very poor community. So I'm very supportive of that. I'm very supportive of some other components in here. The dual training grants so the dual training program is something that actually I worked with then Senator Bonoff. She, just for those of you who are brand new, that she's a Democrat. And we worked across the aisle and bicamerally to put together the dual training program. And there's a $8 million allotment for the dual training program, because it's been incredibly successful. And it partners with industry, and it does high-need, high-pay jobs. It's really important for work development. So there are some really good things in here, and I'm really appreciative of. I just cannot do the numbers with the rest of it. How we're spending this much money, we're still getting tuition increases and layoffs in the Penn State system. So members, I'm going to be voting no, and I encourage you to vote no as well. Thank you.
The member from Anoka, Representative Scott.
Thank you, Speaker Hortman. Well, this is another move towards socialism right here. Socialized free college. Free college. This aspect of the higher education bill was not heard in House committee. This is the first inkling that we've had of it, and now it's something that we have to take an up or down vote on. There's no accountability in this bill to those institutions of higher education to keep them from continuing their spiraling spending on administrative costs. Because the taxpayers will just bail them out, will just pay the tuition for these folks. There'll be they'll be spending money like drunken sailors as if they aren't already. Members, this is just furthering the problem that we've always had with the cost of higher education outpacing inflation by leaps and bounds. It's because of things like the federal government continuing to give grants and loans, so then the higher education institutions just automatically raise tuition because they know they're going to keep, that money's going to keep coming out of the spigot. This is irresponsible. And we talk about the tuition freeze. I don't know if all of you know this, but a tuition freeze is backed up by the taxpayers. We don't just say, hey, freeze your tuition. We pay these institutions money to backfill it. So it's going to be the same taxpayers that are paying for that tuition freeze that are also going to be paying now for free college for 15,000 or so students in the state of Minnesota. There is no empirical evidence that free college means a higher quality of education for more people. I want to read a quote from NPR here on that very subject. Would getting rid of tuition at public colleges and universities by itself give the United States the most educated workforce in the world? Probably not. NPR said that. You know, we discussed a lot in Higher Ed Committee about low enrollment and what to do about low enrollment. But what we didn't look into, really, was why we have low enrollment. Perhaps we have low enrollment. One of the reasons is because people don't think they're getting a good quality education at higher ed institutions. This is not going to help that situation. Members, this is wrong-headed. I'm not saying your heart's not in the right place. And I don't know the numbers. I would have to ask staff. And because this bill, or this conference committee report, was filed last night after most of us had gone to bed, you know, there's been limited time to look through it and actually get numbers to line up. But what I don't know is, of those families that are making under $80,000 right now, how many of them are actually paying for college tuition now? I don't know how many of those people qualify for the state grants and other things that are out there, resources that are out there for these students. So members, this is going to cost money into the future. You are spending us into deficit, not just with this bill, but with your entire budget. Members, free education equals a collective society, not a free one. This is the wrong approach to solving the problem of low enrollment. Sometimes there's a reason for low enrollment and for things changing in an industry. And we have to get to the bottom of that before we just throw more money at it. I'm disappointed. I'm really disappointed. I enjoyed the committee work in this committee. I'm super, super disappointed with the outcome of this committee, of this conference committee report. And members, I encourage a no vote.
The member from Olmsted, Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would the chair and author yield for a question?
He will yield. Representative Quam.
Thank you. What are the impacts to the universities from this tuition program?
Representative Pulowski.
Madam Speaker, Representative Quam, I assume you mean the University of Minnesota?
Representative Quam. Representative Pulowski.
I'm still not clear, Madam Speaker. Representative Quam, you want the tuition impact to the university. The tuition impact to the University of Minnesota would be on the main campus and Rochester campus, a 3.5% increase in tuition, a 1% increase on the Crookston, Morris, and Duluth. There would be no tuition increases in the mid-state system.
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was asking for the free tuition that was added on that I don't think was debated or presented or anything in the House, and I haven't seen any fiscal stuff on it.
Representative Pulowski.
Madam Speaker, members, in a conference committee, we often take things from both bodies that are not heard in the other. The impact of this would roughly be about 50,000 students would be eligible for what they now call the North Star Promise or the free college. If you add the Pell to that, maybe another 25%, another 20,000 students. I hope that answers your question.
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, I was looking at the change in proportionality of in-state versus out-state, because that'll have a cash flow impact on some of the campuses. Effects on full versus part-time participation. I assume there was analysis done before this was implemented so you would understand those impacts. The impacts of on-campus versus off-campus residency, parking, day versus night shifting of of what majors are taken, so that there's, if you do an analysis to do a major change with tens of thousands of students enrolling, you'd want to know, is there going to be a shift in the major areas? You know, there are impacts if in-state, out-state, shift in the support structures and loads. So you've got support structures for the students. If you change the population of students, are you going to have to adapt or change or modify those support structures in the universities? Well, there's a lot of stuff that's just in the little amount of time that we had from the report coming out. When you do a major change, you would anticipate there was a study, an analysis, and information of the ripple effects, the second-order effects, so you took care of any issues or prevented issues from happening. And I'm just disappointed there's nothing being presented to us that there's any. I've got nothing that tells me that they actually looked at what this is going to do. And, you know, frankly, that's not what we're here to do. Is that, oh, this sounds good. The Senate loves it. We haven't talked about it, but there are ramifications of a major change, and apparently we aren't supposed to know what it is.
Further discussion, the member from Hennepin, Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I'm new to the Higher Ed Committee this year, and I have so enjoyed this committee work. And I'm so profoundly disappointed in this conference report. I cannot believe this is the final product that is going to pass into law. So for the public who sees the headline free tuition, I want you to understand, for families that make $79,999 and less, there will be free tuition at the public universities, which is, I think, good for them. But what it's not good for is the state. So this is a cliff. So if you make $1 more, $80,000, you will not be eligible for free tuition. So this is an incentive, members, for families to not earn at their full potential in their years. Most of people who are in their 40s and 50s, when you have kids going to college, those are your highest earning years when you are saving as a family for retirement and doing other things. So this cliff is just a terrible way to do policy. It should have at least been a phase out. But secondly, members, we have the state grant program. So we don't need to create a new program of free tuition when we could have just put more money into the state grant program and increased the eligibility for that. That program works. It's been very successful. There are many students who don't pay any tuition already because of the state grant program and the Pell Grants and the other things. And we should have invested more money in expanding that program, not creating a new program, a new bureaucracy, and not creating this cliff that disincentivizes people to work so that they can instead get their kids free college. It's wrong for our economy, it's wrong for Minnesota families, it's a terrible idea, but I know the headline is, oh, free tuition. Most middle-class families in Minnesota still will not qualify for this, and we are underinvesting in the state grant program that would help those families when really expanding the state grant program could have helped everyone. This is a terrible policy, members, and I'm so disappointed to see this is where we're at. The other thing I was really disappointed to see is that in order to fund this free tuition, we've cut other things that really were good in the House bill. We cut grants to teacher candidates in shortage areas. We cut grants to underrepresented teacher candidates. We cut grants for nursing assistant training programs. Those were programs that we have identified as needs in our state's economy, and those programs are cut. And I'm not sure that was the right trade-off, members. And finally, I'm also struck that we're giving $480,000 in the first 2 years and $220,000 in the second 2 years for free menstrual products. Members, I know that's a need in some areas, but there are other ways to do that without the state putting money into that. And when there are so many other needs for housing and food and other things, we're just creating this new stream of funding that will eventually get more money down the road that is not the best use of tax dollars. And finally, members, and this is a concern I raised in the first iteration of this when it was on the House floor. I had an amendment that would have had $100,000 for a study for how we can right-size public education in Minnesota. As we have talked about many times, we are in an enrollment decline because of demographic changes in our society and in our state. And that $100,000 study would have really helped us figure out what is the best way to use taxpayer money to get the most value for our higher education system, for our students, and for our state. It was defeated on party lines. But in this bill, there's $250,000 for a study about if there are adverse consequences for students and their families in the admission practices and policies and course offerings. And maybe that needs to be studied too. But members, we are in a crisis of enrollment across our higher ed system, and we need to seriously look at how we can address that for going forward. And all the adjustments in courses in the world for are not going to address this issue. If this study was about adjusting duplicity of courses, duplicate offerings, duplicate programs, ways that we can address what's being offered where in the system so that we don't have so many layers of bureaucracy and things like that, that would be worth our time and money. But to spend $250,000 on this and not be studying how to right-size the system is very disappointing. So members, I'm sad to say that this is not a good bill because I really enjoyed the committee work, but clearly we really missed the mark on this, and I urge a no vote.
The member from Wright, Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to answer a question that Representative Quam had, and you had asked for the free college, so that's tuition and fees, how many more students? And so we just had the conference committee hearing, and I asked OHE to come up and tell us that. And so it's 15,000 additional students, 15,000, not 50. I think that the chair misspoke, but it's 15,000, and the average grant will be $3,100. Okay, so that's the average grant. And when you can factor in the 25% Pell Match, which is another component of the bill, you might get up to 20,000 students. And in my reading before, those that are on the state grant program currently are, well, it's hard to say. I'm not going to say that because it's graduated, right? So it's based on income. You get more the less income you have. But so that answers that question. And then to Representative Scott's tuition freeze and how much it costs, it's $75 million to do a tuition freeze. So for the taxpayer, it's $75 million to freeze tuition at the Min-State system. So I think those are all really important things to remember. And also, the last thing I'll say is in the Min-State system, there's $50 million one time to kind of bridge, because they've had declining enrollments across their entire system. St. Cloud State and the St. Cloud campuses have been at the top of the list of low enrollment and having enrollment issues. Even with the $50 million on a glide path, they're still going to have layoffs, and they're still going to have early retirements and other measures that have to be taken, because it's frankly not enough, because they've had such a massive decline in enrollment in some areas of the Min-State system. So hopefully that answers some of your questions, Representative Quam, and thank you, members. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Wright, Representative McDonald.
Madam Speaker, members, I hope that we learn a lesson here. First of all, it's not free college. We sound like a bunch of knuckleheads when we say that. We're lawmakers. It's not free. The taxpayers will be paying for this. And we continue to do this and educate our students, these high school pages, that it's free college. That doesn't help them. That does the exact opposite of educating them. I don't know why we're doing this. Well, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to call it free college. My son's here today, a page. Well, now, I don't know if I even want him to go to college for free First of all, we don't qualify, thanks be to God. But I don't expect you, Representative Pawlowski, to pay for my son's college. And Representative O'Neill and Robbins already mentioned it. There's plenty of Pell grants and grants that help those students and families who can't afford it in the first place. But that's not good enough. In the bill, it was good to be on the committee again. I was pleased. I chose the committee because of Representative Pawlowski. I admire his tenacity, his experience, his expertise, his leadership, and diplomacy. But as you can see, members on this side are completely flabbergasted and very disappointed with the outcome. I thought that it was going to be, we believed that Representative Pawlowski was going to put the rubber to the road and hold the universities accountable for spending. What is it, budgets? What's the saying, Representative Pawlowski? What did you say? Budgets not, what was that saying? Anybody? Representative, I won't ask you to yield. What is it? Grab them by the budgets. Thank you, Representative Robbins, and I'm glad you mentioned the menstrual products. I didn't want to talk about that. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Where do we stop? Should we buy them socks and underwears and hair gel too? So anyway, very disappointed, Representative Pawlowski. I think the House got rolled, Madam Speaker. Certainly, kids and families that can't afford college, this body and the Senate has already done years of work to ensure that it's affordable and that there's Pell grants available for students. But again, it was not good enough. We have to give college away. And by gosh, would you members quit calling it free? The media and us folks here on the floor should not be educating our kids and telling them it's free college. That's a lie. It's not free. Aiden and all the other high school kids, you guys will be paying for this. It ain't free. It'll be paying for it in your taxes. Very disappointing. I'm going to have to vote against this. Certainly you enjoyed the committee, but surprise, I think the House got rolled, Madam Speaker, unfortunately. And it's not free. It's very, very costly. Madam Speaker.
Further discussion to the bill. Representative Pawlowski.
Madam Speaker, members, just to correct at least one statement, I did say at the beginning of the committee, and it's been said several times, you grab them by the budgets and you don't let go. And this bill grabs them by the budgets. This is the first higher ed bill in a long time where we thoroughly looked at the budgets of both Minn State, the University of Minnesota, and also the grant program as it relates to all of the entities, but including the private colleges. We have in state law a 2/3, 1/3 law that says we should fund 2/3 of higher ed and a student 1/3. We've drifted so far away from that that individuals can no longer afford an education in this state. This bill puts us back on the course to actually obeying the laws that we pass in this state of 2/3, 1/3. Only 1/3 of that education should be funded by a student. We should pick up the rest of it. The other part of this bill addresses something that is unique, and that is a worker shortage, a historic worker shortage. We need skilled workers. To get them, we are going to have individuals of all ages go back to school to get an employable skill set. And I'd argue further that this will also allow high school students to take college credits and not acquire debt, and they can graduate with an employable skill set at 18. This bill does a number of things that are long overdue, and I can only ask you to vote for the next generation. We need them. We need them skilled, and we need them employed.
The clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 69 ayes and 62 nays, The bill is passed as amended by conference and its title agreed to.